Everyone in London that season was talking about how the Duke of Westmore was about to get married. But no one knew the condition. Now, let me tell you about Eleanor Ashworth. When Eleanor looked at herself in the mirror that morning, what she saw did not make her sad. There was no time left for sadness. She was 23, with brown hair and gray eyes. Not the kind of beauty London society called beautiful, but the kind it called interesting. The difference was simple. Beautiful girls found husbands. Interesting ones were forgotten in the corner. Her father's affairs had not been going well. For the past 3 years, everything had been slowly collapsing, and now it had reached the edge. That afternoon, Eleanor walked through the garden. For a long time, her mind was working, not emotionally, but practically. She was counting her options. Marriage, marriage, marriage. Just as she was about to turn back, she noticed a man standing at the garden gate. She recognized him. Everyone would. The Duke of Westmore, Adrian Blackwell, stood there in London's finest tailoring, with the straightest posture and the most unreadable face. As if appearing uninvited in people's gardens was perfectly ordinary for him. Eleanor did not pause. She did not slow her steps. She walked straight toward him. "Lord Blackwell," she said, "you must have a very good reason for getting lost in our garden." The man studied her, not with judgment, not even with interest, more like someone reading a document. "Miss Ashworth," he said. His voice was low. "There's someone I need to speak with. That someone is you." Inside, in her father's study, that room full of papers and debts, Adrian Blackwell explained everything in 3 sentences. He wanted a marriage, not a real one. 1 year. "There are certain people in Parliament," he said, "who want to destroy me. They have something, you don't need to know what. The image of a married, settled man will make that thing useless. 1 year will be enough. After that, we'll divorce quietly. No one will ask questions, and your family will be free of its debts." Her father was about to say yes. Eleanor raised her hand. "One moment," she said. She turned to Blackwell and looked directly into his eyes. The man neither stiffened nor looked away. He simply waited. "What exactly do you expect from me in this arrangement? To behave like my wife in society. Stand beside me at balls, host guests. Aside from that, I will not interfere with your life. Will we live at the estate? Yes. Separate rooms?" A moment passed. "Yes." Eleanor turned again, looking at the numbers on the desk. Then she stood. "I have conditions," she said. Blackwell did not even raise an eyebrow. "Go on." "My family will not know about this arrangement. They will believe it is a real marriage. I will have to lie to them, and I accept that. But I will carry that burden alone. You will say nothing about it." "Agreed." "Second, I will have my own space in the estate. No one enters my room without permission, and no one questions how I spend my time." "Agreed." "Third," she paused, "at the end of this year, when the agreement ends, there must be enough money left for my family to live comfortably. Not just paying the debts. Real security." This time Blackwell waited. A few seconds. "Agreed," he said, and his voice had not changed. Still the same low, flat, empty tone. But Eleanor noticed something. The man had never asked for a price. He hadn't negotiated. He had simply agreed to everything. Should that have reassured her, or made her uneasy? Before leaving, Blackwell turned back. "One more thing," he said. "This is the only rule of the agreement. For 1 year, you will simply play the role of my wife. No love, no questions, no feelings. When the year ends, we are both free. Simple. Eleanor did not smile. Simple, she repeated. The man left. When the garden gate closed, Eleanor turned to her father. The old man was looking at her, with that mixture of guilt, hope, and worry. Eleanor. "It's all right, father," she said. "I accept." Her voice sounded calm. Her father did not see that her hands were shaking. "We'll take a very short break. If you don't want to miss new stories, please subscribe to the channel." The wedding was 3 weeks away, and during those 3 weeks, Eleanor kept wondering about only one thing. What could they possibly have that would leave a man like the Duke of Westmore this desperate? 3 weeks was enough. At least for appearances, flowers were chosen, invitations were sent, and Eleanor's mother had a wedding dress made from the most expensive fabric she had ever seen. She was happy. The whole family was happy. Eleanor pretended to be happy, and she did it so well that at some point she almost believed it herself. Only at night, when her room grew quiet, that feeling returned. The cold, silent panic beneath hands that refused to tremble. The church was not small. The Duke of Westmore's wedding could not be small anyway. When Eleanor took her father's arm and stepped inside, she saw the crowd and hesitated for a moment. Familiar faces, unfamiliar ones, all of them were looking at her. All of them were thinking the same thing. Lucky girl. No one knew the truth. At the end of the aisle stood Adrian Blackwell. Black suit, straight posture, expressionless face. As Eleanor walked toward him, the man did not move. He did not narrow his eyes, did not smile, did not fold his hands. He simply waited, just as he had waited at the garden gate the day before, as if his entire life consisted of waiting, and he had grown completely used to it. When Eleanor reached him, he said only one thing in a low voice. "Are you ready?" It wasn't romantic, but it was honest. "Yes," Eleanor said. The ceremony lasted 40 minutes. Eleanor said yes at the right moment, bowed at the right moment, smiled at the right moment. Blackwell played his role too, perfectly. Never too much, never too little, exactly as much as required. When the ring was placed on her finger, Eleanor moved her hand slightly. It was cold. The man slid the ring on and released her hand. The guests applauded. Dinner lasted a long time, a very long time. Eleanor sat at one end of the table, Blackwell at the other. From time to time their eyes met. At the exact moments someone might notice. Each time they smiled. The performance was flawless, but after every smile the man immediately looked away. Near midnight, a lady approached Eleanor. She was older, with a large hat and curious eyes. "You make a lovely couple," she said. "How did the Duke find you, my dear?" Eleanor didn't hesitate for even a second. "He didn't find me," she said sweetly. "I found him." The lady laughed and left satisfied. Blackwell had heard the conversations. Eleanor knew because the man paused while lifting his glass. Just slightly, almost too little to notice. But Eleanor noticed. They arrived at the estate late that night. The carriage rolled along a long gravel road, and Eleanor first saw the lights, yellow, dim lights that looked almost warm from a distance. Then she saw the building itself, and something tightened inside her. It was large. She had expected that, but not this large. 3 stories, built of stone, with ivy covering almost the entire facade. A tower rose on the right wing. Half the windows were dark. This is not a house, Eleanor thought. This is the inside of something. Servants were waiting at the door. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Howell, short, gray-haired, her face unreadable, bowed to Eleanor. "Welcome, Your Grace." It was the first time she had heard the title. It felt strange. Foreign. "Thank you," Eleanor said. The room truly was separate. Mrs. Howell led her to the end of the corridor and opened a large oak door. The room was spacious, a fire burning in the fireplace, the bed wide and white. In front of the window stood a small writing desk. Eleanor looked at the desk. Who had used this room before her? She did not ask. Before leaving, Mrs. Howell turned back. "His Grace's room is at the other end of the corridor. I can have breakfast brought to your room in the morning, if you wish." "No," Eleanor said. "I'll eat downstairs." The woman said nothing. She closed the door. Eleanor stood in the middle of the room for a while. The only sound was the fire in the fireplace. And outside, far away, the wind. Then there was a knock. Not loud, a quiet one. Eleanor turned. "Come in." Blackwell stepped inside. He was holding a long, narrow box. He did not walk to the center of the room, stopping instead near the door. "I had the contract prepared," he said. "You can sign it tomorrow morning. My lawyer will bring it." "All right." A silence followed. The man didn't leave. Eleanor waited. "There's a rule in this house," Blackwell said at last. His voice was still that same flat tone. "After midnight, no one enters the study downstairs. The other rooms are open." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "That is a question." "Yes, the agreement included no questions." She looked at him for a moment. He was right. The agreement had said that. But Eleanor did not step back. "You've set a rule. A rule requires a reasonable explanation." Blackwell placed the box on the desk. "I work," he said simply. "I do not wish to be disturbed." Then he turned and left. Eleanor opened the box on the desk. Inside was a pair of red gloves. Silk. Probably a wedding gift. Something he had forgotten or remembered afterward. The gloves were beautiful. Very expensive. Eleanor looked at them for a long time. The man who buys you red gloves is the same man who tells you why you cannot enter his study at night. Which one is real? She placed the gloves in the drawer. Then she sat down by the fireplace. Everything in the estate was quiet. But in that silence somewhere, she heard the sound of a door closing. On her first morning at Westmore Manor, Eleanor woke early. Not out of habit. She hadn't slept anyway. The fireplace had gone out, the room had grown cold, and outside it was still dark. She walked to the window. The garden was large and covered in mist. It was impossible to make out anything between the trees. In the distance were iron gates. Beyond them, the road. Beyond that, London. This was not London. She washed her face and fixed her hair herself. She had not brought her maid with her, and she did not want to. She hadn't told Blackwell this, but he hadn't asked either. And then she went downstairs. She was alone in the dining room. The breakfast table was already prepared. There was tea, toast, jam, everything was perfectly arranged. Blackwell was not there. Mrs. Howell entered. "His Grace left early this morning," she said. "He'll return in the afternoon." Eleanor poured her tea. "Thank you." She ate alone, quietly. Birds could be heard outside. 1 year, she thought. This is only the first morning. The lawyer arrived before noon. He was a young man with glasses and a formal expression. He placed the contract on the table, and Eleanor read every page. She truly read it, not quickly, but word by word. The man clearly hadn't expected it to be examined so carefully, but he said nothing. Everything was exactly as promised. 1 year, separate rooms, social obligations. At the end of the year, a quiet divorce and the agreed transfer of money to her family. One paragraph caught her attention. If either party violates the conditions of the agreement, the contract shall be considered void and all financial obligations will be nullified. Eleanor put down the pen. What counts as a violation? The lawyer cleared his throat. Forming an emotional attachment, or behaving in a way that might publicly imply the existence of this agreement. So, falling in love, Eleanor said flatly. The man shifted uncomfortably. Madam, it says it in the contract. Eleanor picked up the pen and signed. All right. Blackwell returned in the afternoon. Eleanor was in the library, a large high-ceilinged room, not dusty, but clearly a place no one had sat in for quite some time. The shelves were full. Eleanor had taken a book and was sitting by the window. When the man appeared at the door, she didn't look up. You signed the contract, Blackwell said. Yes. Good. He didn't enter the room. There's a gathering tonight, at Lord Pembury's house. We need to attend. Eleanor closed the book. What time? The carriage will be ready at 8. He turned to leave. Blackwell. He stopped. This Lord Pembury, Eleanor said. Is he one of your enemies? A long silence followed. No, he said finally, but my enemies will be there. Then he left. That evening, Eleanor wore the red gloves, deliberately. Pembury's house was in Mayfair, large, bright, and full of people. When the carriage stopped at the entrance, Eleanor took a deep breath. Blackwell sat beside her, upright, his face as unreadable as always. Are you ready? He asked. He had asked the same question in the church the day before. Yes, Eleanor said. She had given the same answer then. When the door opened, every eye turned toward them. Eleanor felt it, that strange, sticky gaze of high society. Curiosity, jealousy, calculation. It was difficult to tell the difference. Blackwell offered his arm, a mechanical gesture done out of obligation. Eleanor took it, and they stepped inside. The first half hour was manageable. Introductions, polite phrases, glasses of wine. Eleanor remembered every name, matched every face, laughed exactly as much as required in each conversation. Blackwell stood beside her, but did not speak. Eleanor did the speaking. The man noticed it. That much was clear, but he said nothing. Then Lady Hartwell arrived. She was in her 40s, blonde, her eyes not smiling, though her mouth did. When Eleanor saw her, she felt something. Not quite danger, but something close to it. Duchess Ashworth, the woman said. Her voice was sweet, very sweet. At last. I've been eager to hear about you. No one in London has stopped wondering how you managed to conquer Westmore. Eleanor smiled. I didn't conquer him. We reached an understanding. Lady Hartwell laughed. How practical. Marriage is a practical thing, Eleanor said. Most romantic stories end with people discovering that truth anyway. We simply knew it from the start. There was a moment of silence. The calculating look in the woman's eyes shifted for a second. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. Eleanor couldn't quite tell. Blackwell had heard the exchange. His hand tightened around Eleanor's arm by a millimeter. Very slightly, almost too little to notice, but Eleanor felt it. As the evening progressed, the room divided into two groups. The men on one side, the women on the other. Eleanor remained among the women, but from time to time her eyes searched for Blackwell. He stood in the corner of the room. 2 men were beside him, one elderly, the other middle-aged. They were not speaking, only waiting. Blackwell was waiting as well. Then a 3rd man arrived. Eleanor had never seen him before. He looked to be in his 50s, well-dressed, smiling. But his smile resembled Lady Hartwell's. The mouth smiled, the eyes did not. He approached Blackwell and said 2 words. Eleanor could not hear them, but she saw Blackwell's back stiffen. Only for a second. Then everything returned to normal. As they were getting into the carriage, Eleanor couldn't help herself. Who was that man? Blackwell didn't answer. The carriage started moving. The night outside was dark, and the lights of Mayfair faded behind them. Blackwell. Lord Cavendish, he said at last. An old acquaintance. An acquaintance. Yes. Eleanor turned to look at him. His face was hidden in the darkness, but his jaw was tight. Is he the one threatening you? Silence. That is a question, Blackwell said. Yes, and if you leave it unanswered like before, I'll find my own answer. Slowly he turned toward her. Even in the darkness, his eyes were cold. If you do, he said, it will be bad for both of us. It wasn't a threat, but it was a warning. Eleanor turned back to the window and watched the darkness outside. When they returned to the manor, neither of them said a word. Blackwell went straight upstairs. Eleanor sat by the fireplace and took off her gloves. The red silk looked almost like blood in the firelight. Lord Cavendish? An old acquaintance? It will be bad for both of us? Eleanor placed the gloves on the table and closed her eyes. Some things were impossible not to ask within a year. The real question was, when would she ask them? She saw Lord Cavendish for the 2nd time a week later. This time, Blackwell was not with her. That morning, Eleanor had gone shopping alone. Bond Street, fabric shops, a glove shop, the kinds of things a new duchess in society was expected to do. The only person with her was a young maid, Mary, quiet and quick, someone Eleanor had already begun to like. She was standing outside a shop studying the window display, about to step inside when she heard a voice. Duchess Ashworth. She turned. Cavendish was removing his hat. His smile was the same as before, wide, warm, the kind that never reached his eyes. Lord Cavendish, Eleanor said. Her voice was even. What a coincidence, the man said. I happened to be nearby. He paused. So Westmore leaves you alone. I'm not alone. Eleanor nodded toward Mary. Cavendish laughed, as if Eleanor had missed a joke. Of course. He stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough to notice. If I invited you for tea, would you accept? There's a lovely place nearby. Just 5 minutes. No, Eleanor said. The man stopped. Thank you, Eleanor added politely, coolly, but I don't have the time. For a moment, Cavendish studied her. His smile didn't disappear, but something in his eyes changed, that calculating, measuring look. Of course, he said at last. Another time. Then he turned and left. Eleanor walked into the shop. She didn't see a single pair of the gloves in the display. That evening, when she returned to the manor, she went straight to Blackwell's study. She knocked. It was 8 o'clock, not a forbidden hour, still before midnight. Come in. Blackwell was at his desk. Papers were spread before him, a pen in his hand. When he looked up, surprise flickered across his face. It was the first time Eleanor had entered this room. Cavendish approached me today, Eleanor said. She remained by the door, not stepping further inside. On Bond Street. It wasn't a coincidence. Blackwell put down his pen. What did he say? He invited me for tea. I refused. She paused. But next time I won't know what to do, because I don't know what the man wants. Blackwell stood up. He walked around the desk and went to the window. Outside, the garden was dark. A long silence followed. Eleanor waited. She did not push. Then the man spoke. Cavendish is a powerful man in Parliament, he said. His voice was as even as always, but something was beneath it, weariness perhaps, or caution. Eleanor couldn't tell. A few years ago, we were partners in a certain venture. Later, our paths separated. He still has some documents from that partnership. What kind of documents? He turned and looked at her. You don't need to know to stay safe. Eleanor stepped inside. One step. I don't need to know to stay safe, she repeated. But I might need to know to protect myself. Blackwell's eyes didn't change. But something passed through them, quickly, almost too quickly to notice. Documents showing financial transfers, he said at last. Some of them are not clean. They were made in my name, but I didn't make them. Can you prove that? No. Then why hasn't he destroyed you yet? Because he's waiting for the right moment. He turned back toward the window. Cavendish is a patient man. He doesn't rush. He waits until everything is exactly where he wants it. Eleanor thought for a second. And I am that point, she said. Aren't I? If he proves our marriage is fake, your plan to appear as a settled man collapses. Together, that would be enough. Blackwell didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. Eleanor turned back toward the door. Then she stopped. Tomorrow morning, she said, you will tell me what you know about that partnership. Not everything. I don't want that. But I need to know what Cavendish actually has. Why? Because he will approach me again. And when he does, I need to know what to say. How to behave. Blackwell turned. He looked at her. Really looked at her, not with that usual assessing gaze, but with something else. Eleanor felt it, though she couldn't name it. The agreement, he began. The agreement said no questions, Eleanor said. I know that. But you are speaking, and I am listening. That isn't asking questions. Silence. Then something appeared at the corner of Blackwell's mouth. It wasn't a smile, but it was the closest thing to one Eleanor had seen so far. Tomorrow morning, he said. Late that night, as Eleanor sat in her room, there was a knock at the door. Not loud, quiet, familiar. Come in. Blackwell did not step inside. He opened the door slightly and stood in the doorway. A small piece of paper was in his hand. These are names close to Cavendish, he said. If you know who he speaks with, where he goes, it might be useful. Eleanor stood and took the paper. Her fingertips brushed lightly. Not the paper, but his hand. Less than a second. Neither of them commented. Thank you, Eleanor said. Blackwell nodded once and closed the door. Eleanor placed the paper on the desk. There were names on it. 8, 9 of them. One was underlined. Lady Hartwell. Eleanor closed her eyes. Of course. She remembered that sweet voice. Those eyes that did not smile. No one in London has stopped wondering how you managed to conquer Westmore. That hadn't been curiosity. It had been measurement. Eleanor folded the paper, placed it under her pillow, and lay down. Everything in the manor was quiet. But this silence was no longer the same as before. 4 days later, Blackwell saved her. There was a tea gathering hosted by Pembury's wife. Mayfair, afternoon, a gathering of women. Eleanor had to attend, a social obligation. Blackwell hadn't said it, but Eleanor knew. The drawing room was full. The conversations were light, the gossip heavy. Eleanor was standing in a corner speaking with Lady Ashby, elderly, kind, harmless. When Cavendish entered, a women's gathering, and he walked in. Eleanor understood immediately. This was not coincidence, it had been arranged. Cavendish walked straight toward her. This time he did not remove his hat, did not bow. "Duchess Ashworth," he said quietly. Lady Ashby had become distracted speaking with someone else. "Do you know what Westmore is hiding from you?" Eleanor set her glass down. "Lord Cavendish." "You don't have to answer, just listen." He stepped closer. "Your husband is not a good man. He's using you. I know the details of your arrangement, all of them." Eleanor froze. Outwardly, she looked perfect. Inside, something tightened. He knows everything. "There are people who could free you from this situation," Cavendish said. "Come speak with me. Tomorrow at 5. Claridge's—" "No." Cavendish fell silent. "If you approach me again," Eleanor said quietly, "I will tell my husband. And I believe you understand what it means to approach the Duchess of Westmore on Bond Street or at tea gatherings." The man's face did not change, but his eyes hardened. "Be careful," he said. "You as well," Eleanor replied. When she stepped outside, her hands were trembling. She stood on the steps, waiting for the carriage. Cold air struck her face. Just then, another carriage pulled up. Blackwell stepped out. Eleanor blinked in surprise. "You?" "Mary sent word," he said briefly. His eyes passed over the young maid standing beside Eleanor. A small acknowledgement, almost invisible. "Mary?" The man had told Mary to inform him if something happened. Eleanor processed that. Blackwell stepped closer. His voice was low. "What happened inside?" "Cavendish came. He said he knows about the arrangement." Blackwell's jaw tightened, only slightly, but Eleanor now recognized that sign. "What did you say?" "I refused. And I told him if he approaches me again, I'll tell you." Blackwell stopped. He looked at her. This time the look was different. There was no assessment in it. Something else. Eleanor didn't know the name for it, but she felt it. Something small and warm in the center of her chest. "Get in the carriage," Blackwell said. He turned and walked ahead. Eleanor followed. She sat inside the carriage, the man sat beside her, and the door closed. London moved past the window. Blackwell did not speak. Eleanor did not speak either. But this time the man wasn't looking out the window. He was looking straight ahead. And Eleanor noticed something she might have missed if she hadn't been watching carefully. His hand was resting on the seat between them. It didn't move. But it was only inches away from hers. She didn't take it. Blackwell didn't take it either. But the hand stayed there. The entire ride. Cavendish remained silent for a week. That silence should have reassured Eleanor. Instead, it made her uneasy. It was exactly what Blackwell had said. A patient man, a man who waits. Eleanor knew that. Still, the silence felt strange, pressing. During that week, Eleanor began to grow used to the manor. Not truly used to it. To grow used to a place meant accepting it. And Eleanor had not accepted it. But she no longer got lost in the corridors. She knew which staircase creaked less in the mornings. She knew the left corner of the library caught the afternoon sun. She knew the expressionless look on Mrs. Howell's face was actually a mask, and something existed beneath it. She was learning Blackwell as well, without realizing it, without intending to, but she was learning. She knew he left early in the mornings. She knew he drank his coffee without sugar, but added 2 cubes to his tea. She knew he liked the library, but never entered it, as if something inside were waiting. He would stop at the doorway, look in, then move on. One day, she couldn't resist asking, "Why don't you enter the library?" Blackwell was standing in the doorway, as usual. Eleanor was inside near the window. The man turned. He didn't raise an eyebrow. "That is a question." "Yes." Silence. "The books belong to my wife," he said finally. Eleanor froze. 1 second passed. 2. He had a wife who had died. Eleanor had not known this. No one had mentioned it. She had never heard it in society. But suddenly, certain things about the manor made sense. That room, those closed doors, that quiet exhaustion. "I'm sorry," she said. Blackwell inclined his head. "There's no need." Then he left. That evening, Eleanor asked Mrs. Howell. Not directly, carefully at an angle, as if passing along the edge of another subject. "The manor is very beautiful," she said, while the table was being cleared. "Has it been like this for long?" Mrs. Howell paused for a moment. "His Grace purchased it 7 years ago." 7 years? Eleanor waited. The woman did not continue. Eleanor took one more step. "I heard his marriage was short." Mrs. Howell looked at her. A long, measuring look. Then she said, 2 years. Her ladyship came here already ill. She passed away a year later. Was she young? 26. Eleanor did not ask anything else. That night she lay in her room, staring at the ceiling. 26. 1 year ill. She remembered the way Blackwell stood at the library door. That look. Someone who wanted to go inside but couldn't. "The books belong to my wife." Cavendish made his move on Thursday. That morning Eleanor found a letter in her own room, beneath her pillow. Someone from inside the house had placed it there. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One sentence written across it. "The Duke of Westmore will pay for the documents he signed in 1887. You do not have to pay for them. Claridge's, today at 5. Eleanor folded the paper and slipped it into her pocket. Then she went to Blackwell's room. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Mrs. Howell appeared in the corridor. "His Grace left early this morning, Your Grace. He'll return in the afternoon." Eleanor turned. "Who entered my room?" The woman frowned. "Your Grace?" "There was a letter placed under my pillow." Eleanor kept her voice steady. "Who entered?" Mrs. Howell's face changed. The thing beneath her usual mask surfaced this time. Worry. "I don't know," she said. "But I will find out." Blackwell returned that afternoon. Eleanor was waiting in the study. Not her room, his. When he opened the door and saw her inside, he paused for a moment. Eleanor placed the paper on the desk. The man stepped in. He picked it up and read it. His expression did not change, but that jaw tightened again. "Who entered your room?" Eleanor asked. "I'll find out." "That isn't enough." Eleanor stood. "Cavendish has someone inside, in the manor. That's serious." "I know." "Then tell me." She paused. "Tell me the truth." What did you sign in 1887? Blackwell looked down at the desk. A long silence followed. Eleanor waited. Finally, he spoke. Slowly, carefully, weighing every word. In 1887, my father died, he said. There were debts, large ones. Cavendish decided that was the perfect moment to approach. He paused. He had me sign certain investment papers. I signed them. I was young and foolish and thought I had no other choice. Later I realized those papers were part of documents covering dirty financial transfers in my name. He trapped you, Eleanor said. Yes. And ever since then? Yes. Eleanor thought for a moment. Why hasn't he used them until now? For the first time, Blackwell looked directly at her. Because if he destroys me with those documents, it ends. But if he keeps me under control, he can gain much more. He's been living off threatening you. In simple terms, yes. Eleanor stepped closer. And the marriage blocks that because if a scandal breaks now, it won't pass quietly anymore. Destroying a married, settled, respectable man is something else. Public opinion would support him. And I wouldn't be on the defensive. I'd be on the attack. The room was silent. Eleanor remembered the sentence from the letter. You do not have to pay for them. He wants to use me as leverage, she said. If he proves our marriage is fake, he destroys both of us. But if I meet him, maybe I gain something. Blackwell's eyes hardened. No. Listen. No. This time his voice did not rise, but something inside it was firm, final. Cavendish is dangerous. I cannot send you into that room. You're not sending me, Eleanor said. I either go or I don't. That's my decision. Silence. Long, tense silence that filled the room. Then Blackwell slowly walked around the desk. He stopped in front of Eleanor, one step between them. They had never stood this close before. If you go, he said quietly, I will tell you everything. Exactly what Cavendish wants, what he holds, where his weakness is. But until you leave that room, I will be waiting outside. Eleanor looked up at him. Don't you trust me? Trusting is one thing, Blackwell said. Losing is another. The room fell quiet. Losing. Eleanor heard the word. Truly heard it. And she noticed something. When he said it, his face had changed. Very slightly, almost not at all. But it had changed. For the first time. All right, Eleanor said. Claridge's was full at 5. Eleanor entered. Blackwell remained outside, in the carriage, across the street. Cavendish was waiting at a corner table. No hat, relaxed, as if meeting an old friend. You came, he said. He looked pleased. I came, Eleanor said, sitting down. But this will be brief. Cavendish stirred his tea. What did Westmore tell you? Enough. Enough. He laughed softly. That man will never tell you everything, Duchess. That is his greatest flaw. Eleanor waited. The 1887 documents are real, Cavendish said. The signatures are real. In court, Westmore would be convicted. But I have no intention of going to court. He paused. I only want one thing. There is a bill in Parliament next month. Westmore's vote will be decisive. If he casts that vote the way I want, everything ends. The documents disappear. Your marriage continues. Everyone is happy. Eleanor looked down at the table. A bill, a vote. Could it really be that simple? You could have told my husband this yourself. I did, Cavendish said. He refused. His eyes were watching her. But you are different. You are intelligent, and Westmore cares about you. I can see it. Eleanor raised her head. You think he cares? She said. I don't think so. I know. Cavendish leaned forward. The maid who followed you on Bond Street. The carriage waiting outside the tea gathering. The man sitting across the street right now. I see all of it. Something tightened inside Eleanor. But her face did not change. What exactly do you expect from me? She said. Simply speak to him. Explain the vote. Persuade him to change it. He paused. I will handle the rest. Eleanor stood. My answer is no, she said. Cavendish looked surprised, truly surprised. He could not hide it. Duchess, tell my husband yourself, Eleanor said. But before next time, remember this. If you place another letter in my manor or approach me again, I will share this conversation with every member of Parliament. That you tried to pressure a duchess. That you're using people to do it. She paused. And I believe you know how London reacts to things done to a duchess. Cavendish's face froze. Eleanor turned and walked out. Outside it was cold. As Eleanor walked down the steps, her hands were trembling. They hadn't trembled inside. But now they did. The carriage approached from across the street. It stopped. The door opened. Blackwell did not step out, but Eleanor climbed in. The door closed. The carriage began to move. Silence. Then Blackwell's voice. What did he say? Eleanor told him. Everything. The bill, the vote, the threat. He listened. He did not interrupt once. When she finished, there was a long silence. What did you say? Blackwell asked. I said no. Silence filled the carriage again. They entered Camden. The lights grew fewer, the darkness deeper. Then Blackwell spoke. Thank you. 2 words. Low, flat, the same voice as always. But there was something in it. Something Eleanor had never heard before. She turned to look at him. The man was staring out the window. His profile was dark. But his shoulders, those always straight, always tense shoulders, had dropped slightly. Only slightly. Eleanor looked forward again. Her hands were still trembling. He did not reach for them. But this time the distance between them was not a handspan. It was less. When they returned to the manor, Blackwell stopped her in the corridor. Eleanor. It was the first time he had used her name. Eleanor turned. The man held a small key in his hand. Old iron, faintly rusted. The key to the room beside the library, he said. You may use it whenever you like. Eleanor took the key. It was cold, heavy. Blackwell turned and walked away. Eleanor looked down at the key. The books belong to my wife. You may use it whenever you like. Her eyes warmed. She wasn't entirely sure why. But she held the key tightly. And that night when she slept, it wasn't under her pillow. It was in her hand. The last month of the year passed in the quietest way. Cavendish did not appear again. The vote in Parliament took place. Blackwell voted as he had intended. The result went against what Cavendish wanted, yet the man made no move. The documents were never revealed. No scandal erupted. Blackwell explained it to Eleanor in a single sentence. Cavendish has encountered other problems. Eleanor did not ask what kind of problems. This time she truly didn't ask. Not because she wasn't curious, but because of the expression on the man's face. He looked tired. For the first time. All right, she said. And Blackwell looked at her, not with that familiar, assessing gaze, but with something else. And he said, "All right." During that final month, the manner changed. Or perhaps Eleanor did. It was difficult to tell which. At breakfast, they now both sat at the table. At first they ate in silence. Then one morning Eleanor brought the newspaper, read something aloud, a ridiculous argument in Parliament, and Blackwell responded. Short, clipped, but it was a response. The next morning the newspaper was already on the table, beside Eleanor's cup. The first time Eleanor entered the room beside the library, she stood in the doorway for a long time. It was a small room, a window, a sofa, shelves, books arranged neatly, some clearly read, others untouched. In the corner stood a small writing desk. On it lay an unfinished piece of embroidery. Eleanor did not touch it. But she sat in that room every day. She read books there, sometimes simply sat. Once Blackwell appeared at the doorway. He did not enter, only looked inside. Eleanor lifted her head and looked back at him. Neither of them spoke. The man left. But the next day, something appeared on the desk. A small bundle of purple flowers from the garden. It wasn't clear whether they were meant for Eleanor or simply left there. Eleanor took them and placed them by the window. On the final night of the year, it rained. Eleanor sat in her room, watching outside. The garden was wet, the trees dark, the iron gates in the distance shining with rain. Tomorrow, the year would end. The papers the lawyer had prepared lay on the desk. They had arrived 2 days earlier. Eleanor had not looked at them since. Not really. Now she stood, walked to the desk, and took the envelope. She opened it. The divorce papers. Names, dates, conditions, everything in place, clean, precise. She picked up a pen to sign, stopped, then set the pen down. She stood, walked across the room, and went to the window. Rain beat against the glass. 1 year. What had happened in a year? Breakfasts, newspapers, the library, purple flowers, hands in the carriage, keys, 2 words. Thank you. The first time she heard her name. Eleanor. Nothing had happened. Everything had happened. She woke early the next morning. She went downstairs. The dining room was empty. Blackwell had not yet arrived, or perhaps had left earlier. Eleanor poured tea, sat at the table, and waited. The door opened. Blackwell stepped inside. He was wet from the rain. He had been outside early. His hair was slightly disordered, his coat still on. When he saw Eleanor, he stopped. "You're up early," he said. "I couldn't sleep." The man removed his coat, hung it on the chair, and sat at the table. Eleanor poured tea for him, automatically, without thinking, the way she had done for the past few months. Blackwell looked at the cup. He said nothing. They both ate. Quietly. But this silence was not the silence of the first days. Not that empty, cold silence. This one was full. The cups were empty. Blackwell did not stand. Neither did Eleanor. "The papers arrived," Eleanor said. "I know. When you want to sign, I know." Silence. Eleanor looked at the table. "Have you signed them?" "No." She lifted her head. "Why?" Blackwell looked at her for a long moment. "Have you signed them?" he asked. "No." Silence filled the room again. Long, heavy silence. Outside, the rain continued. Blackwell stood. Eleanor stood as well. The man walked around the table and stopped in front of her. One step between them, like in the carriage, like after Claridge's. But this time the distance was smaller. "It's been a year," he said. "Yes." "The agreement is finished." "Yes." The man said nothing more. Neither did Eleanor. Rain struck the glass. Then Blackwell spoke, low, even, the same voice as always. But this time what was inside it was no longer hidden. "If you leave," he said. "If you want to leave, everything is ready. The carriage, the money, the documents. Everything I promised for your family has already been transferred. I finished it last night." Eleanor froze. Last night. She had said she couldn't sleep. "Go," Blackwell said. "Or if you want to stay," he stopped. His jaw tightened. "This time there will be no agreement, no conditions. Only," the words broke off. The man had never left a sentence unfinished before. Eleanor stepped closer. "Only what?" she asked. Blackwell did not look away. He did not narrow his eyes. He simply looked at her. "Only this," he said. And that cold, distant man, the one whose face had never revealed anything, for the first time, he held out his hand. Palm facing upward, waiting. Not demanding, not pulling, just waiting. Eleanor looked at his hand. She thought about the year, the library, the key, the purple flowers, the hands in the carriage, the thank you. "The first time," he said, "Eleanor." Then she lifted her own hand and placed it in his. The rain had stopped. Outside, everything was quiet, that clean, washed silence that comes when something begins again. Eleanor looked out at the garden through the window. Blackwell stood beside her. There was something between them that had never been spoken. Words were no longer necessary. The papers were still on the table. Neither of them signed. 1 year earlier, Eleanor Ashworth had signed an agreement. For 1 year, she would simply play the role of a wife. No love, no questions, no feelings. Simple. Nothing had been simple. But this, whatever this was not bad at all. Thank you for listening to the story all the way to the end. Please tell us which city you're watching from and what the story made you feel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories.